Hi, I'm Ben McClintock, the co-founder of Defending Utah at defendingutah.org. I've been involved in the liberty movement for many, many years. For over a decade, I was the Western States Director for a national liberty organization and featured in many regional and even national publications. In addition to Defending Utah, I also run a chicken ranch. In pandemics of the past, there was no questioning how serious it was because it was self-evident. Hospitals were overrun. Death hit virtually every family. No one was left unaffected. However, with COVID-19, there are mass movements with protests, news reports, and mass refusal to comply with government mandates. Now, what's the difference between people voluntarily taking precautions versus so many people questioning the official narrative? In 1793, the Philadelphia yellow fever outbreak killed 10% of the population. People chose to isolate themselves because the danger was obvious to any observer. Even the capital of the United States was moved out of Philadelphia because of it. For 30 years, the United States faced a cholera outbreak from 1832 to 1866, killing upwards of, again, 10% of the population. The people were able to observe its effects and willingly took steps to ensure the prevention of infection. No government intervention was needed for the people to do what was naturally obvious. In 2009, the H1N1, or the swine flu, is said to have killed almost 300,000 people, with upward of over 1 billion suspected cases. Even with these statistics, the response of governments worldwide was nothing compared to what we are seeing with COVID-19. These were clear and obvious threats to the public health. However, the current purported pandemic has killed 0.0005% of the population. However, even that percentage is seen to be high by many, since the CDC counts people that died with COVID the same as if they had died of COVID, with 96% of that 0.0005% now being called into question. From the very beginning, the White House was admitting estimates were drastically overstated.
I'm sure many of you saw the recent report out of the UK about them adjusting completely their needs. This is really quite important. If you remember, that was the report that said there would be 500,000 deaths in the UK and 2.2 million deaths in the United States. They've adjusted that number in the UK to 20,000. So 500,000 to 20,000.
Another cause of Americans questioning the official line is the change of messaging. From the CDC telling Americans not to get masks, to everyone being forced to wear a mask, and now certain masks are actually worse than no mask, according to the CDC. Add to that the mantra of flattening the curve to return to normal being replaced now with the idea of a new normal, only coming when a large portion of the population gets a vaccine with limited testing, government safety precautions suspended, and no track record of long-term effects. With an ever-changing goalpost and a threat of never returning to the way things were in February of 2020, based on a virus with death rates far lower than previous pandemics, people are starting to wonder, what's really going on? You are not alone for questioning the mainstream narrative. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to demand answers. It's okay to demand your rights be preserved. It's okay not to be satisfied until the answers make sense. If you like these videos, we are doing more and going more in depth into these topics to help us to better understand what's really going on, to help you know what questions to ask and how to stand up for your rights. Subscribe to this channel, share this video with others. Make sure that your elected officials understand what's going on and that it will not be tolerated that your rights continue to be stripped away. Mandates issued by mayors and governors across the country are getting a lot of press and causing a lot of controversy. Some people claim that they're illegal, but recently Utah Governor Gary Herbert claimed that the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution gave him the authority to issue these mandates when he said,
"This is an issue that's been tested under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. The Supreme Court has weighed on this a number of times, saying we have the ability to make this a mandate."
That was on July 17th, 2020. What does the 10th Amendment say, and does he actually have the right? The 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says, quote, "The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. The word or in this instance didn't refer to the idea of the states and the people being two different entities, but that the people were the states. The people as individuals retained these powers. The U.S. Constitution gives the general government powers that the Founding Fathers called few and defined. To make it clear that the powers given were limited, the 10th Amendment was added to the Constitution, clearly laying out the fact that if the Constitution didn't specifically give the federal government that power, they could not do it, and that any power not given to them was the power kept by the people themselves. Does that mean that the states have the authority to be as authoritarian as they want to be? Clearly, that is an absurd idea. Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution guarantees every state in the Union a republican form of government. In short, that means that each state must be based on the idea found in the Declaration of Independence that we are given by our Creator certain inalienable rights, and that government's role is to protect those rights. And to do that, the general as well as state governments implement what is referred to as separation of powers. With three branches of government given different jobs the other branches are prohibited from engaging in. These branches are the legislative, they write the laws; the executive, they implement the laws passed by the legislature; and the judicial, they settle arguments. James Madison rightly observed, "The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny." In other words, the power to make law cannot be combined into the same person that executes the law under any circumstance, or you have yourself a tyrant. Not only is each branch prohibited from taking these powers upon themselves, each branch is prohibited from giving their power to any of the other branches of government. The legislature cannot execute laws. The executive cannot adjudicate, and so on. But didn't the governor say that the courts have ruled on this? Herbert was referring to Jacobson versus Massachusetts. This Supreme Court opinion stated that because of the 10th Amendment, the states retained the authority to implement compulsory vaccination laws passed by the legislature. Now, I disagree that anyone has the authority to force you to inject something into your body. But just setting that aside, this court opinion wasn't talking about dictatorial decrees of the governor. It was referring to law that had to go through the rigorous process of being introduced in committee, then going to the floor of the House, then going to the Senate committee, then to a full vote on the floor of the Senate, and then after all of that, being approved by the governor. Why? Because the executive branch, the governor, has no authority to make law, even if you call that law something else, like a mandate. Laws or mandates that violate the Constitution, either in its delegation of powers or the separation of powers, are what the Founding Fathers called pretend legislation. The Founders also told us to nullify or ignore all pretend legislation. In short, the president, the governor, or your city mayor has no authority to make laws. It has gone so well beyond any reasonable doubt that government representatives are acting outside of their constitutionally delegated authority and are violating the principle of separation of powers that is so fundamental to how our country was set up. What's supposed to happen in our system of government is each branch of government is a jealous guardian of their authority. They will do all they can to make sure the other branches do not attempt to steal the authority from them. However, what we are actually witnessing is the different branches willingly ceding power to the other branches, with the legislature actually writing laws, unlawfully attempting to give the executive branch legislative powers, while the judicial branch is throwing hurdles in the way to make it harder for the public to challenge these illegal actions of power swapping, leaving the average person wondering what, if anything, can be done. let's consider some stories from our nation's history that will teach us what has been done in the past. In 1809, Congress passed an embargo against ships in ports of the United States. Connecticut, remembering the words of James Madison, that there was no higher authority than the states to decide if a law passed by Congress was constitutional or not, passed a resolution stating they would not consent to this act of Congress. The Connecticut legislature stated, quote, that to preserve the Union and support the Constitution of the United States, it becomes the duty of the legislatures of the states vigilantly to watch over and vigorously to maintain the powers not delegated to the United States, but to the states respectively, or to the people. Due regard to this duty, meaning preserving the Union, will not permit this assembly to assist the aforesaid unconstitutional act. End of quote. And just a few years previous to that, Kentucky, under the leadership of Thomas Jefferson, proclaimed, quote, the several states who formed that instrument, meaning the Constitution, being sovereign and independent, have the unquestionable right to judge of its infraction, and that a nullification by those sovereignties of all unauthorized acts done under color of that instrument is the rightful remedy. The founders clearly taught it was our duty to vigorously watch over the branches of the general government to ensure that they were not violating the Constitution, and that if we found out they had, it was our duty, if we are to preserve the Union, to nullify, which is to annul, to make void, to render invalid, to deprive of legal force or efficacy those actions. In 1830, Georgia nullified illegal rulings of the Supreme Court by passing laws to hang anyone attempting to implement the edicts of the court. In the 1950s, Rosa Parks nullified laws telling her where she could or could not sit on a public bus. In the 2000s, 21 states actually together nullified a national ID card scheme passed by Congress. After Obamacare passed, multiple states nullified the individual mandate. Today, the people must stand up for the Constitution by refusing to comply with a government that threatens the Union with its illegal mandates telling you how to worship, who you can gather with, what medical treatment you must have, and what kind of face diaper you must wear to get food for your family. You and I must follow the admonition of the Founding Fathers and nullify, annul, make void, render invalid, to deprive of legal force or efficacy these illegal mandates. By ourselves, it can be difficult to stand up. This is why we are encouraging you to join with us at Defending Utah, so we can stand together, defend our neighbors, and join with our neighbors to defend our own rights. Together, we are having an impact, opening businesses, restoring parental rights, and putting the government on notice. We would be wise to remember Edmund Burke's statement, "When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one in unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle." Become a member of Defending Utah. Join with us today.